All right, I think we're recording. Awesome. And welcome to the show, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Dan Hafner. I am joined by a special guest of mine here today. I'll bring him in 1 second. We're going to talk a lot about founder processes. What should you be focusing on as a founder? Like, what are the main problems from someone who's actually built this, works with founders all the time? I'm very excited to bring him in and kind of pick his brain in this topic of things. It's going to be very, very interesting. And I think if you're in this space of wanting to start something, maybe you've already started something and struggling with what do you do next? Like, we're always in technology companies, it's always kind of this push and pull of what do you focus on? Where do you allocate resources? How do you pull this off? This will be a very, very useful episode for you. So before I do that, please subscribe, like, and rate the show. That is always super, super helpful. Whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that is always super, super helpful. And obviously share this episode and the show with anyone you think might get value out of it. So welcome into the show, Mr. John Driscoll. He is the founder of, or the CEO, I'm sorry, of Naked Development, which is ranked actually the #1 software development company in the country. It's based out in California. And he's also, I believe, the managing partner, managing person at Naked Ventures, I believe he said it was, which is a VC capital firm. So that's very, very interesting. So welcome to the show, John. How are you?
Great, Dan. Yeah, great to be on the show. Love to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, no, it's really awesome. So before we dive into what I talked about in the intro, just tell us a little bit about how did you build, where did the idea from Naked Development come? How did you build that over the past, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, so I started building apps on March 6, 2008. Do you know what that day was, Dan?
March 6, 2008. Well, 2008 was the middle of the recession.
What is it? Everybody always brings that one up. Yeah.
Well, because it's I feel like it's
It was
in that
big.
mind, at
Yeah.
least for us older, like it's kind of like 2007, 2008 was like, that's what
Yeah.
the only thing we remember happened. But no, I don't know what that exact date
March 6,
was.
2008 was a very good day, not a bad day. It was the day that Steve Jobs came out and opened the App Store.
Oh, I should
And
have
so
known
the
that.
App
Okay.
Store was launched on March 6, 2008. I was watching that day. And they said you could pay your $99 and sign up and become a developer. And I did that day.
Wow.
So I always say I was the first app developer because I started with everybody else. Not
Wow.
true, but
One
up to
of
that
the
point,
first.
yeah, I was definitely the first day. So up to that point, we only had 16 apps on the iPhone. The iPhone was already out for about 9 months at this point, and people could only use the 16 apps that were on the App Store, which basically meant, you could listen to music and you could text people, but there was no
Wow.
way to download another thing that you wanted to use. And so when they explained that and they said, hey, we're going to be able to build these, I was blown away at the opportunity and I jumped on board. I was making software, but I had not made a mobile app. Obviously, nobody had. And I jumped on and we started trying to do it. It was an interesting time.
You're an
Um,
OG in this space, as they
I'm
say.
definitely an OG in
Wow.
the app
Very cool.
space. Yeah. So that was kind of where it started. I was consulting and I was working with other firms, and I worked with this firm called PhD Labs, and they were pretty popular at the time. And I came on and started selling and really working with them exclusively at one point. And that kind of grew. And that's when my co-founder and I, we got to a point where we were like, I think we want to start our own thing. And so we, 6 years, almost 7 years ago, we started Naked. And we had this mentality of what the ultimate software app development company could be. And it was a pie in the sky concept. And I pinch myself every day because we've done most of what we wanted to do at this point. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good for you, man. That's really cool.
Thanks.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. So I'm interested, being one of the OGs in the game,
Mhm.
compared to 2008. I mean, obviously it's been 16 years. We're in 2024 at the time of this
Mhm.
recording. Um, I mean, it sounds like a silly question to say, like, how have things changed? Obviously, they've changed monumentally, but like, what
Yeah.
what are some of the most transformative changes that you've seen to the app development game over the years?
Yeah, so it's changed a ton. The first initial thing was there was a lot of pushback from corporations because we first started selling enterprise. And there was a big pushback from corporations on whether they even needed a mobile app. So the first movement in this space was people even just optimizing websites for apps. So we used to have these subdomains m dot whatever your domain was, and people would have their mobile live there, and the phone would sense that you were on a phone, and it would bring up this mobile version of your website. That was the first movement in mobile. And we started making a lot of web stuff to address people's phones just being around, right? So that was the first movement. And then that was, before we even did a lot of native stuff. But the other thing, the big movement was that came after that is the big argument between Adobe and Steve Jobs, which was the HTML5 or, well, there was the Flash issue, and then there was the HTML5 or native conversation that was out. And those two conversations, we're all sitting on the sidelines not knowing how that was going to materialize. I took guesses at the time. I said, I think native's going to be around. I don't think web's going to be able to replace it all, right? And that was the big movement. And then, the language frameworks, that was a big thing. So there's been a lot of changes, and that's a constant thing. Now, we're going into such a low code era that we're seeing. And so I think there's always going to be this kind of movement, and you just have to be willing to change. Yeah.
So speaking of change, what do you see as the coming changes? And you just mentioned low code, which I love to hear because we're a no code development place. But what are some of the changes? I mean, obviously we have AI, we have those types of things.
Yeah.
What are some of the big changes you see over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'd be amiss if I didn't say, AI integration into apps, I think is we're going to spend a lot of time trying to apply the possibilities. And I think, that was the same thing we did in 2008. It was like, okay, great. We have this small piece of real estate on our phones, right? And then what happens when we take an application and we make it smaller? And how does that help us, right? And the same thing's true when you ask the AI question is, okay, great. So now we have this amazing information and data and all this stuff that's possible. Well, some people are just putting AI into things just to put AI into things. That doesn't mean it's a good application of AI. Like the
Right.
question is it really helpful? And so at Naked, we're very, very big on asking those hard questions and being really ultra practical with customers and products that we build, that we don't just build just to be fancy. We build because it's useful to the user. The user is the boss in the end. And if you aren't thinking about the user, then you're building stuff because you're a curious developer, and that's a really dangerous game.
Yeah, been there. Been there. So,
Yeah.
well, I think a lot of people have been there too. So, no, that's a very good point. So, do you think that there's a natural progression of kind of exactly what you said? Like, there's some testing and experimentation of, okay, great, this awesome new cool thing of AI comes out, um, and a lot of times you don't even know what it's capable of. And there might be a new generation of another thing that comes down the line someday too.
Sure.
And do you think that there's like a natural, kind of find your footing space in not only I'm talking about building apps, but also like if you're just building a single application for your business, do you find that there's like kind of like, okay, we kind of have this idea of what we want it to do, and people have told us what they want, but we also know that there's 9 million more capabilities that this thing can do that people would love, but we don't really know how to implement it, but we don't know if they'll want it. Like it seems like a very gray, big gray area.
Absolutely. I think we, in a smaller sense, we saw this with blockchain.
Mm,
Everybody thought everything was going to be built on blockchain. And I was getting all these weird phone
yeah.
calls, during that time. And what people realized is that blockchain has a lot of applications, but not a lot of applications that you can make money on. And
Mm.
that's the real challenge. And unfortunately, unless the money flows, people won't invest. And so if you don't have monetary gain coming from the technology, then R&D dries up. And we've seen this conversation happen with with Bill Gates. And so you have to kind of make sure there's a true application that benefits people, but one that people will pay for, or the R&D will dry up. So I think that was the real blocker for blockchain, no pun intended, but I think that's kind of what happened. And there's a lot of amazing things that blockchain can do. And I think AI's got that same problem, is that there are a lot of things it can do, but how does that help people enough where people want to pay for that? I think it's going to make applications a lot better. I don't think it's going to have the block that blockchain had, but I do think we're still searching for where those things are. The most obvious one is helping us all write stuff. You know,
Mhm.
I think the most useful AI that I use is the built-in AI inside HubSpot when I'm writing emails. I
Mhm.
freaking love it. It helps me write things. I used to have copywriters who had to do all that, and it's amazing that I can just handle all that myself. I don't have to worry about it being wrong, you know, and it's still me, still my voice, but it helps me to write it better. And I love that. And so there are just so many other things it's going to do, but I think in marketing we're seeing a lot of low-hanging fruit in
Yeah.
AI. Yeah.
Well, just to stay on this topic of AI for one more question, I'm interested because I was just talking with my wife about this the other day. And I was like, it's very interesting that I find myself like in those types of things too. Like, oh my gosh, like even coming up with the title of this podcast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, once I've started to learn how to outsource some stuff to AI, it's almost like, okay, my mind puts that in a bucket of something I never have to do again. It's like how our brain works. It's like once
Amazing.
once you know
Yeah.
how once you learn how to drive, you can kind of learn how to like it becomes second nature when to hit the brake, when to do this, when to turn, it's like automatic functions,
Yeah.
right? So what I'm trying to ask is, you know, do you notice this happening with you, or do you think that this is actually something that could be negative for us just as a human species? I'm not even talking technology, in app specific. Is this something that you think is something that we'll have to deal with eventually? Is this
100%. Yeah,
wow.
100%. Yeah, it's the thing that happens with technology is, unfortunately, as we get these things and they're really helpful, apps being the one that I experience the most, they're amazing, but for every good thing we create, we often create two bad things. And
Hmm.
somebody asked me, if I could go back, which I can't, but if I could go back and like take the phone away, would I do it? For society, maybe. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think because I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I think you see a lot of really distracted people and very anxious people, and the phone has a lot to do with that. Now, I love that I don't have to worry about what the weather is or how to get somewhere, or I love all the things it does for me, but I also am weary of, you know, it's destroyed dating. It's destroyed a lot of things that used to be very normal. And, you used to be able to just go somewhere, not talk to someone all day, get home and say, "How was your day?" That's not a thing anymore. And I remember it was, and not too long ago. And so now we have these great, amazing tools, but they're also kind of hurting us a lot. And I'm kind of
Hmm.
on this mission to try to solve real world problems to make things better. One of them is dating, because I think we've destroyed it. I think there's a way to use technology to actually fix it, but I think we're going about it the wrong way.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. I would like to dive more into that, but I also want to cover some other stuff. So, all right. So do you guys work mostly with funded startups like that actually go and raise capital, or self-funded?
Both. Yeah, because we actually help people get funding. We actually guarantee that you'll meet investors when you work with us. So
Okay.
that's a guarantee that we make and deliver on every time. So it's yeah, I think it's both. It's about 70% have some funding when they come
Okay.
to us,
That's what I was going
but
to ask.
most of
Okay.
them are going to need to raise some funds in the process, which is how we started the venture arm of Naked, was to address that. But I think, yeah, I like both. I think, whatever your situation is, if you're trying to get where you're trying to go, I want to help you. That's kind of
Yeah.
my mentality. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I asked that because I want to know, like, what's the success level that kind of comes with those, right? So, I mean, I know it's generic and vague and maybe high level question, but
Mhm.
do you see more, you know, startups that get funding that end up succeeding, or more ones that are self funded that end up succeeding, or it's kind of a mix of both, or what is it?
Listen, eh, somebody can increase your odds of succeeding, but nobody can ensure that you're going to succeed. That is not a thing. It's still startup.
Okay.
People have to be realistic. Um, you are still taking a risk on, and you're most likely going to fail. That is just what it is.
Yeah.
I think it's one out of 280 companies ever reaches 10 million in revenue. Um,
Wow.
and as somebody who's been there, it's hard. It's very, very hard. And so the biggest problem I see with most founders is just having really bad expectations for what that road looks like. And I feel like my mission in life is to give them the true story. Because some founders probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like maybe their life is not conducive to be a startup founder. That's okay. Like, I'd rather you not try than to try and have bad expectations and fail. Because it's just like, if you had this true story, maybe you wouldn't have done it. You could have taken that energy and gone somewhere else in life. I see a lot of people waste a lot of time trying to do it, and they don't have right expectations. So they're not even doing what it takes to succeed because they don't know what that even looks like. And so I like to educate people on what it actually looks like. And I try not to pull any punches and tell you, listen, I've seen hundreds of these guys succeed. I know what it looks like. It comes from all walks of life, educated, not educated. I've seen all kinds, but there are some common things that all of them do that makes them successful. And I'll tell you what those are.
Yes. What are those?
That's great. I think most of the time it's being let me just say the prototypical founder that doesn't succeed, and I'll tell you the opposite of that person. Okay. So the antithesis. So the prototypical founder that you meet, which is very, very common, believes that their idea, and if they just make that idea really cool, that they'll be successful. And so that is just could not be farther from the truth. Uh, I've seen founders with really great products that fell on their face. What really is the separation, the opposite of that, is the founder who's really, really good is not banking on that and knows if they get in the market, they can figure it out because they're resourceful and they're not going to quit. That's the founder who makes it. Those two people are very, very different. One is I would call outsourcing responsibility by putting that responsibility on the product. And the other one's taking responsibility for the company.
Hmm.
And those are two very, very different people. And I can tell you, I can generally meet them pretty quickly and tell you who they are.
Yeah. Oh, I bet after you've done this for a long time, I know you coach people on this and everything. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. And just to go back from your previous answer, I've been that person as well too. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I've also struggled with thoughts of like, man, should I really have done this? Like maybe like
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
all kind of go through like that those phases at times.
Absolutely.
Because I've noticed I've become very introspective and learned like, okay, there's times when I really know, like I look back and I'm like, man, I'm not focusing on the right things that I need to be focusing on.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And I mean, for me, I know I tend to beat myself up a lot, and I need to learn to be a little bit more forgiving sometimes. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of us do. But no, that's very good. So it's outsourcing responsibility versus taking responsibility. That's very good. Very good. Anything else?
Yeah, that's the big one. And then I think product focused or marketing focused or market focused. I think Y Combinator said that. I didn't make that up, but I think it's something I look for. So if I could choose a founder, whether it be a marketer or a developer, I'd take the marketer all day long,
Yeah.
100%. Because if you build a really wonderful product and nobody knows about it, it's not going to matter. But Craigslist still has people using it, and it's a terrible product,
Yeah.
right?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is, and it's one of the best places to learn to find a good new idea, by the way.
Yeah.
YouTube and Craigslist is a amazing place to go find an app idea.
Wow.
I love that because you go, oh, the market's already proven. All I got to do is make it a better experience and everybody will do it. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who said it? I forget. There's a quote. It was like, if you give me a hamburger stand, I'll beat you every single time because I know one thing that you don't, and it's a hungry crowd. And it doesn't matter what the burgers I'm selling or what they are or anything like. If you give me a hungry crowd, like I'll make tons of money. I forget
Yeah,
exactly what
yeah.
the
That might
quote
be
was. Yeah.
Alex Hormozy because that's one of his concepts in $100 million offers, right?
Okay.
It's a
Okay. Yeah.
starving crowd, right? That concept. And that's a concept I actually teach. And it's true. You know, what's interesting is I'm a Rams season ticket holder, and I can't wait. We have our first preseason game against Cowboys this weekend. So,
Nice.
but one of the things that happens when you leave the game is you are leaving the game. The game's over, and you're about to be offered the best hot dog you saw all day. And that hot dog will be the vendor outside wrapping it in bacon and blah, amazing, right? But often I'm not hungry at the time when I'm leaving the game because I already ate a lot. So even though they have the best product, they're getting me at the wrong time. So
Mm.
I rarely have bought one because even though I know it smells 10 times better than the one inside the stadium. Yeah.
That's interesting. No, that's a very, very good analogy. That makes a lot of sense.
You got to catch people at the moment. You know, I sometimes call them event sales. It's like an event takes place in their life. Like if you're, let's just say you're a funeral salesperson and you sell caskets, but nobody's died in your family, you're not thinking about that, right? But
Yeah.
have a death in your family and all of a sudden you're an expert on caskets, because you have an event happen in your life and then you go boom. And that's what Google kind of does, right? People go, I have an event. How do I find that thing? Right. And that's generally how you find and meet those people is by, attacking Google, you know.
Yeah. I mean, even probably for somebody like in your, for naked development is probably a search based advertising type of thing of, hey, we need app development, we need software development. Like
It's
that's
definitely the biggest part of finding us. That's
yeah.
where everybody finds, best app developer in the world, and you find me everywhere. That has been the best thing for us is maintaining that reputation is much harder. Getting it was hard, but it's now that we're there, it's kind of, we have to just try to maintain it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what's the future? What's the future of naked development? What's the future of John Driscoll look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. We think about that all the time. Right now, I'm really just focused on providing stuff for people that can't afford us, because there's a lot of those folks. We only approve 12% of all clientele, so it's a very exclusive group of people that get approved with us. If you think your idea is good enough, please pitch it. But I would just say it's very hard to get into our program because we sell very, very hard at making you successful once you're in. Um, and we built it a lot of it off of Y Combinator, to be honest. It's no secret. But so what I'm trying to do is try to say, okay, what about those hundreds of people that I can't serve every month, who come to us? What can I do for them? And so I've been starting to really, really build out content and try to pull those people up into the system so that I can approve their app and I can approve them as a founder and I can work with them. Because I really do love meeting new founders who have the energy and the desire and they have a good idea and they just need to execute it. I love meeting those people. It's exciting for me every single day to meet a new person that's got this massive vision and this real passion and they want to disrupt the market. I live for those moments. I really do. And so I spend a lot of time recording content like this, or being in a studio and recording masterclass and things like that I do. And that's why I came out with that, 5-day program recently, which is free, and people just go in and they watch it for 5 days, and it's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have the link for that in the show notes. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, no, I think it's that those are it's like, we talked about Steve Jobs. It's those who think they're crazy enough to change the world that actually do, you know.
Yeah.
I love it. And I see that as well in everything I do day to day is, well, and I say this a lot on this show. There's no such thing as $1 million idea. There's only $1 million execution, right? It's like anyone can come
So
up with
true.
any idea. You got ChatGPT at your fingertips. You can say, "Hey, give me 10 cool, awesome $1 million app ideas," and boom, it spits them out like that. That doesn't mean they're real. It doesn't mean that they're going to be executed on. It doesn't mean that they're nothing but just words on a screen at that point, you know.
Yeah.
And that's where the rubber meets the road. I remember actually I saw this person that had posted like 101 interesting micro SaaS ideas. Like if you just want to have small software tools or just a small thing. Like one of them was it was like hockey rink management software. Like make a software tool that hockey rinks in your area can use to manage schedules and collect payments and get teams and do all this other stuff and whatever. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Here in Pittsburgh, there's probably lots of those, right? But is that something that, one, is validated, two, that I can make money on, or three, that somebody could do? And then what's actually involved in that? How do I grow that? How would I do that? Right. So what do you think? Like, so if someone comes into that space and they say, "Hey, Dan, that's actually a good idea. I'm going to do that in my area."
Hmm.
What's the critical steps from, okay, I have this idea, but now I want to make it real. I want to do something about it. What are the critical pieces to that, in your opinion?
Well, step one, no matter how you go about step one, and there's a lot of paths to step one. Step one should be prove your theory correctly. Market validation. It's the number one thing, and you shouldn't stop until you feel that your theory is validated. So first of all, realize it's a theory and it's not a fact. I can't stand, that's the first red flag I see in founders when they go, "Oh, I know this thing will be successful." No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't know that. So you have to come truthful and honest and go, "Hey, this is my hypothesis. I think there's this market out there. They want this thing. Let's build this thing. I'm going to see if that's real." Right? That's what I'm after all the time. Probably the process of doing that could be two paths. It could be, let's build the product and see what people say, or let's market a fake product and see if they buy it. I like both those paths. I really do. I wish I could get more people to take the second one. Because I really like going, "Hey, let's market something out there and see if people do it. And if they do it, we'll make it." I love that. But very few founders are willing to do that. I
Because
wish I could
it's
convince more
interesting.
founders to be down with that, but that's how I build stuff personally.
That's interesting. I'm actually in the midst of building a new product. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one because I've kind of done a hybrid of that. I've already built the product, and we've got a couple of beta people, like a handful of people in it, right? A few hundred.
Hmm.
But we're also in the process of going out and selling it as well and kind of further
Hmm.
validating it. And actually, some of the things that we're marketing for it um, aren't actually really built in the app, right? Like it's kind of part of the
Yeah,
the feedback we've got from the community and things like that of like, hey, this would be cool to have. And then we go and we say, hey, it includes this and this and this and this, which we could build, but they're not
yeah,
really there.
yeah.
I'm interested. What do you think about that idea?
No, I like that. I think that's how most people do it. The advantage you have when you market it first is you get to hear from the market right away before you've even spent $1 on building it.
Yeah.
And you kind of, maybe you've spent a little money designing it, right? And then you have like a prototype of what that thing looks like. And I don't mean surveying the market. Let me be clear about that. That's a misunderstanding.
Mhm.
Asking somebody what they think they will do and what they will do are two different things.
Yes.
People thinking surveying people is market validation. Please save yourself time and money. It's
Yeah.
bullshit. That's not real. You have to get out there and market it like it's real. And then if people click and you get clicks and you get validation from people interested, you know, then you should build it. If you get a lot of people that are very interested and sign up and put their information in, and maybe they don't buy it, but they at least are interested enough to do something, to take an action, then you might be on the right track. And then you should probably build that. That's how I built my content. I had a theory of what the content was. I hadn't even written it. Some people who watch this are going to be mad at me about that. But I sold people, made money on it before I ever wrote it. And then I was like, well, I guess I should write it. And I started writing it. I did
Yeah.
that. And I had already made money to pay for all the studio time, all the stuff I did, because I knew if people bought it, I knew I should do it.
Yeah, and I think that's a lesson I learned the hard way, and I always try to pay it forward with is that it feels if you're in that space of like doing that, it can if you've never done it before, it feels weird. Like it almost feels it
I think
like
it's
again,
exciting.
what's that?
So some of the people in the office, they call me a gunslinger because
Oh, okay.
they think that that's really wild. And I'm like, that's a really experienced founder who does something like that. Not
Mhm.
new founders do not have the stomach for it. But if you're taking, like, I would have given all those people back their money. It's not a problem. Nobody's going to get mad at me if I did that, right? I'm not going to keep it, you know? So I didn't hurt anybody in the process. I didn't expose myself to a lot of people. I only used my current database. I didn't go out there and run ads. I just went out to my current database and said, blam. And they went, we're in. And so I went, cool. All right, let's build this thing. And I'm building an app around it now, but I waited until I had the market saying, we want this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the key. It can be a very tricky thing to do, but it's a mental thing. It's more of
Yeah.
it's the 6 inches between here. It's
Yeah.
that's really where the
I'd
battle
say
is.
maybe emotional, but yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's not
interesting.
logical. It's because it makes logic, but people emotionally struggle with it. And that might be the biggest problem with the pounder is them being logical and not emotional.
Yeah, I feel like I tend to be very logical. And that can always hold. But once you learn yourself and you know yourself like that, then you can take the proper things to do that with. So
Yeah. Yeah, for
very,
sure.
very interesting, awesome. So okay, so you mentioned your this 5-day class that you've put together. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well too?
Yeah, so it's called the 5-day 7-figure app challenge. Really, what
Nice.
I do is I do a 5-day class that walks you through. You get a lot of the content you get when you pay us $20,000 to just work with us, but you get it for free. And I brought in my co-founder, I brought in my creative director. I bring those guys into the studio, and we kind of just give away all of our secrets that we've never talked about in 15 years. And I just decided, we're at a place now, we don't need to worry about that. So I don't need to keep these secret anymore. So we just started saying, hey, this is our philosophy and how we make a product. This is our philosophy and how we market a product. This is our like we basically gave you the goods. And it's been a lot of fun. I've had wild response from it, and it's been a lot of fun. So it's just if you throw it in the notes, but it's 7figure.app is where you find it. Just the number
Seven.
7figure.app. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
And we're gonna start running those every week starting next week. And every Monday we'll start another 5 days. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Definitely check that out. So yeah, that'll be in the show notes for you guys here below.
Cool.
Awesome, John. Well, this was very cool, very fun conversation. We talked about a lot of things. Do you have anything else to add before we sign off?
No, no, I appreciate it. I think, one of the last things I would say is the best thing to do as a founder is don't die. Don't quit. If you really believe, keep going. I think
Amen.
most of the time I think people were really close to being successful and they just quit too early. Yeah.
3 feet from gold. I love that image.
Yeah.
Everyone's seen that. It's like you're 3 feet away. Just keep going.
You're right there. Keep rolling. Yeah.
Very
It
interesting.
is really the thing. If you can stay alive, you'll make it.
Live to play another day.
Yep. That's
Absolutely.
it. That's it.
Awesome. All right, John. Well, I appreciate you coming on as always. Thank you guys for joining the show. Be sure to check all this stuff out. Check out Naked Development. Check out his challenge. It's very, very interesting. We did something like that years ago. Haven't really done it recently, but this sounds a lot more advanced, a lot cooler. So definitely check that out. And it's completely free. You have nothing to lose.
Yep.
So thank you very much, John. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next time. And thank you for all for watching or listening to the show. As always, please like, rate, and respond to the show in any way that you possibly can. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Dan.